I'll never forget the day she walked into my life. People talk about life-changing moments as if they're wrapped in gold, like a sunrise or a miracle you can hold on to. But my moment wasn't golden. It wasn't beautiful. It was the kind of moment that sneaks up on you with soft footsteps and a smile. A moment that feels harmless, until it rewrites everything you thought you knew. That day started like any other. Nothing special, nothing worth remembering. I was existing the way broken people do. I kept my head down, drowned myself in work, filled the silence with noise so I wouldn't have to hear my own thoughts. Because the truth is, I was already wounded before she came. My heart wasn't whole. It was fragile, like glass that had been cracked too many times and somehow kept standing. And then there she was. Her smile caught me first. Not the kind of smile that screams for attention, but the kind that whispers, almost shy, as if it was never meant for the world, only for me. That smile told me lies I desperately wanted to believe. It told me, I see you. I understand you. I could heal you. And when you're broken, you don't question the hand that offers to lift you. You take it. I remember how she looked at me that first day. The tilt of her head, the way her eyes lingered a second longer than strangers' eyes usually do. I didn't know it then, but that look was her first move. You see, people say love blinds you. They say it makes you foolish, reckless, careless. But betrayal? Betrayal does the opposite. It forces your eyes open so wide you can never close them again. After betrayal, you don't see the world through rose-colored glasses anymore. You see every crack, every lie, every shadow you once ignored. Back then, though, I didn't see shadows. I only saw her. At first, she made me feel like I was the only man in the world. Every text she sent, every late-night call where she whispered she couldn't sleep without hearing my voice, it pulled me deeper. I didn't realize I was sinking. I thought I was flying. She knew exactly what to say. That's what made her dangerous. She wasn't just beautiful. She was smart, sharp. She studied me like I was a puzzle she was determined to solve. And when she found the missing pieces, she used them. She knew where I was weak. She knew I was lonely. She knew the words that would slip past my defenses. I remember one night, the way she looked at me, eyes soft, voice barely above a whisper. She said, "You're different. You're not like the others. I can finally trust someone." And I believed her. God, I believed her. Because deep down, that's all I wanted, to be different for someone. To matter in a way no one else did. I didn't realize those words weren't a confession. They were bait. My friends noticed before I did. They told me I was moving too fast. "Bro, slow down. You don't even know her like that," they warned. My brother was the loudest of them all. One night, he sat me down, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Man, something feels off. You don't really know her. Be careful." But I didn't listen. When you think you're in love, warnings sound like jealousy. Advice feels like noise. You convince yourself that no one else can see what you see. And what I saw was a future. I saw us in a home together. I saw mornings with her smile greeting me before the sun did. I saw nights where we'd fall asleep in the safety of forever. I saw a life, a family, a forever. But what she saw wasn't love. What she saw was an opportunity. It started with the little things. Small cracks I pretended not to notice. The kind of things you explain away because you don't want the dream to end. She'd cancel plans at the last minute, saying she was caught up with something important. Her phone was always face down when we were together, always buzzing quietly as if it had secrets it didn't want me to read. Sometimes she'd disappear for hours without a word. And when I asked her about it, she had an answer for everything. Perfectly rehearsed, polished, and sweet enough to make me feel guilty for even asking. "Oh, my friend needed me. That's why I couldn't answer." "Sorry, I was busy with work." You know how it is. And the worst one, the one that silenced me every time. "Why don't you trust me?" 3 words, simple as they were, and suddenly the guilt was mine. Somehow she flipped the script, made me feel like I was the wrong one. And I believed her excuses. Again and again. But the truth has a way of sneaking out. You can bury it for a while. You can hide it under sweet words and fake smiles. But sooner or later, truth claws its way to the surface. And when it does, it doesn't knock softly. It kicks the door down. It started small. The kind of small things you brush aside, because you don't want to lose what you think you've found. At first, it was just her canceling a dinner here, a movie night there. She'd always have a reason, and every reason sounded so harmless, so believable. My mom needed me. I had to help my friend. Study. Work kept me late. I told myself she was just busy. That she had a life outside of me. And of course she did. I didn't want to be the kind of man who seemed controlling, who questioned every little move she made. So I let it slide. Every single time. But little cracks have a way of widening. What starts as a hairline fracture can, with enough pressure, split something in half. That's how it felt with her. Slowly, without me realizing, the cracks began to show. Her phone was always face down. Always. Even when it was charging. She'd angle it away from me. And when it buzzed, she'd glance at it, slide it into her pocket, and change the subject. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But I told myself it didn't mean anything. That's what love does to you. It makes you explain away the obvious. One evening, we were sitting on the couch, and I heard the buzz of her phone against the table. I glanced at it out of habit. She snatched it up so quickly it was like her hand had been waiting above it, hovering. "Why'd you grab it so fast?" I asked with a smile, trying to make it a joke. She laughed, but her laugh was sharp, forced. "Because it's private. Do I go through your phone?" "No," I said softly. "But you don't hide yours like it's a vault either." Her smile faded. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, and that's when she hit me with it. "Why don't you trust me?" 3 simple words. A question sharp enough to turn me from a man with doubts into a man with guilt. I shook my head immediately. "I do, of course I do. I didn't mean anything by it." And just like that, the blame was mine. Again. But the thing about guilt is, it only silences you for so long. Doubt doesn't go away just because you swallow it. It grows in the dark like mold. There were nights when she'd disappear for hours. No calls, no messages. I'd sit there staring at my phone, waiting for that little notification, convincing myself she must be busy. My brother saw the look in my eyes once and asked, "She's not picking up again, huh?" I forced a laugh. "She's probably just tired, man. You know how it is?" He shook his head. "Nah, I don't. When you love someone, you make time. Even if it's 2 minutes to say goodnight. Something's off, bro." I brushed him off like I always did. Because I wanted to believe her more than I wanted to believe my own family. That's how deep she had me wrapped. But the truth has a way of slipping out through the smallest cracks. And for me, the truth came on a Friday night. I remember it clearly, because I had spent the whole week planning something special for her. I wanted to remind her that we mattered, that we were solid, that whatever was distracting her didn't have to pull us apart. I booked a little restaurant she once mentioned in passing, a place she said she always wanted to try. I ordered flowers, and I even picked out a new shirt because I wanted to look my best for her. I sat at that table, candlelight flickering, waiting for her. The waiter came by once, twice, 3 times. "Would you like to order, sir?" he asked gently. "Not yet," I said each time. "She's on her way." But she never came. I checked my phone, nothing. I called her once, twice, 5 times, straight to voicemail. Hours passed, and my perfect night turned into an empty table, cold food and stares from strangers, who pitied the man waiting for, someone who wasn't going to show. Something inside me snapped that night. Something told me this wasn't just another excuse, another harmless "I'm busy." Something told me to stop waiting for her lies and start looking for the truth. And so I did. I drove without even knowing where I was going, guided by instinct more than logic. And when instinct speaks, you learn to listen. It led me to a part of town I rarely visited. And there, through the wide glass windows of a fancy restaurant, I saw her. My heart stopped. She wasn't alone. She sat across from someone else, dressed in the kind of way she never dressed for me anymore. She was laughing, really laughing, the kind of laugh that used to belong to me. Her hand was stretched across the table, fingers laced with his. And in that moment, the world around me faded. I couldn't hear the cars, couldn't feel the phone vibrating in my hand. All I could see was her and him. My chest tightened. My hands shook. My body screamed at me to storm inside, to demand answers, to make a scene. But my legs, they refused to move. I was frozen. Because standing there, staring through the glass, I realized something more painful than being cheated on. I realized I had been played. All those sweet words, all those promises, all those nights I stayed awake whispering about the future. None of it was real. She hadn't loved me. She hadn't trusted me. I wasn't her soulmate. I was her backup plan, her distraction, her fool. I turned away that night. The image of her smile burned into my mind like a scar. It was the kind of moment that doesn't just break you, it reshapes you. Because once you've seen someone's true face, you can't unsee it. And I knew, deep in my bones, that nothing would ever be the same again. The days after that night felt like someone had stolen the sun from my life. Mornings came with a weight that no coffee could lift. And nights were made of the same loop, her laugh, the sight of her hand on his, the way the candlelight had caught in her hair. I moved through the routines of my life like a ghost. I went to work, answered emails, smiled at colleagues, but everything felt numb, as if someone had turned down the color of the world. I tried the things people tell you to do. I deleted her number. I blocked her on every app. I unfollowed, unfriended, erased her from my digital world like ripping pages from a book. It helped for a minute. The screen was blank, but the echo of her voice was still loud in my head. The deletion felt performative, like I had swept dust under a rug. The stains were still there. Friends came by. They brought pizza, sat on the couch, and tried jokes. "Man, she's trash," one said, puffing air like it would fill the space she'd left. My brother slammed his palm on the coffee table once and said, "You're too good for her, bro. Don't waste your life." The kind words helped. The noise helped. But when they left and the apartment fell silent, the ache returned like tidewater. I thought about just disappearing for a while, traveling, changing numbers, starting over. Running felt tempting. There's a kind of raw freedom in putting distance between yourself and the pain. But running never fixed the thing inside. The problem was not the city or the restaurant, or the memory of a laugh in a glass. The problem was that I had let someone shape my story, and she had lied in the margins. I wanted the book back. Some nights weakness overwhelmed me. I lay on the bed and let my mind replay the moments where I could have asked harder, stayed calmer, pushed just a fraction more. Regret is a heavy thing. It presses down with its cold palm and makes you smaller. But then a different feeling started to grow under the regret. A slow, steady heat that wasn't about anger at the person in front of me, but anger at what I had allowed myself to become. That anger felt useful. It was a kind of energy I could direct. One night, after staring at the ceiling until dawn, I got up and walked to the kitchen. I opened a drawer, pulled out a small notebook I'd kept years ago, the kind with thick pages. I turned to a blank sheet and started writing. Not about her. Not really, but about me. Who I was, who I wanted to be, what I refused to let become my story. The act of writing felt like anchoring, catching myself while I drifted. I decided then that I would not be defined by this betrayal. I would not become the caricature of the scorned man, ranting in the street and posting late-night rants. I wanted to do something smarter, something that would close that chapter cleanly. I wanted truth, not noise. I wanted to reclaim the narrative. So I began to study her. Not in the way a stalker studies, but in the way a detective pieces together a story from fragments. I made a list, simple at first, times she canceled, the excuses she gave when she was unreachable. I wrote down the kinds of things that had once felt like small, explainable incidents. But when you place them side by side, patterns start to appear. Patterns are the danger zone for people who live by performance. They confess. I started keeping screenshots. I dug up old messages. I'd saved without thinking and compared them to new posts and tags. I took notes on the tone of her comments, the people who liked and disliked them, and the names that appeared frequently in the margins of her life. Every small inconsistency became a breadcrumb. Date here, photograph there. A check-in that contradicted a message. Little facts that, when connected, became a roadmap. A few things emerged quickly. Some men appeared in her life on and off, always orbiting around the time she grew distant. There were dinners and late-night posts and hashtags that didn't align with what she told me. She had a habit of saying one thing out loud and doing another. She curated an image meticulously. Pictures that screamed carefree, captions that hinted at a tender heart, but the behind-the-scenes messages told a different story. It was like watching a play with the back curtain slightly lifted. I didn't want to be vindictive. I wanted precision. I wanted evidence. And I wanted to present it in a way that couldn't be dismissed as bitterness. So I organized. Screenshots into folders, dates into timelines, receipts and tags into a file. I documented what she said and what she did. I wrote down names. I copied posts. I kept my notes neat because neatness is a kind of discipline that steadies the mind. At the same time, I rebuilt myself. The plan needed a calm head. I ran in the park to clear the rust from my chest. I went to the gym. I read books that had nothing to do with the situation. History, stoicism, little things that shifted my perspective. Strength softened the raw edges of my hurt. Discipline made the plan possible. I stopped drinking like it was medicine. I slept more. Small things, a haircut, a clean shirt, a steady hand. Every improvement was a brick in the foundation. I meant to stand on when the day came. I didn't tell many people what I was doing. There were one or two friends. I trusted true friends, who had seen the pattern unfold and had their own quiet suspicions. I called them in for coffee. We spoke in low voices. "Just be careful," one said. "Make sure you're not chasing ghosts." Another brought up an exchange he overheard between her and someone else. A name dropped like a coin. It all fit into the file I was building. The more I talked, the more angles I discovered. People remember details differently, but the core of a story tends to be the same once you gather enough witnesses. There was a part of me that wanted to rush everything, to storm in, to slam a folder of evidence on a table, to force a confession. But the plan called for restraint. Patience was a weapon. I had to let her keep playing her role, to let her think she'd gotten away with the performance. In that arrogance, she would loosen up. Arrogance is the kind of enemy that mistakes silence for weakness. Then came a moment that mattered. Sammy, the other man. I found him by accident, or maybe not. Once you start looking, the world fills with patterns you didn't notice before. He was visible in a handful of her tags. A few friends' photos and a comment here and there. I did the practical thing. I collected what linked them, pictures from the same dinner, the same location tags, overlapping timelines. I wanted nothing more than to ruin someone else's life. But I didn't want him to be a blind player in her game either. He deserved the truth if he chose to hear it. I arranged to meet him. I kept it private, in a coffee shop with a table in the corner. I didn't go in with rage. I went in with facts. I put the folder on the table between us, the images, the dates, the messages, and let it sit there like a silent argument. Sammy's face shifted from confusion to disbelief, to a slow, sinking understanding. I watched him read, watched the neat stack of evidence align into a narrative. He didn't lash out. He sat back, fingers pressing his forehead like someone trying to push the shock out of his system. "You gave him a future," he said at last, voice quiet. "She gave you a cover story." He looked up at me. "I don't want to hurt her. I thought she was different." His face was empty in a way that matched the hollowness I'd felt when I'd first left the restaurant. "What do you want me to do with this?" he asked. "Decide for yourself," I said. "I'm not here to tell you how to feel. I'm only here so you don't keep walking in, blind." I didn't want him to be another casualty of her habit. He thanked me in a way that felt like both apology and apology owed to himself. That conversation did something to her world. Not because I broadcast the evidence, but because I passed it along to someone she trusted, someone who could pull the rug out from under her performance without my having to shout. People tend to believe what they can verify for themselves. Sammy began to look differently at her posts and the casual inconsistencies. The person who had loved her for the thrill of being chosen began to see the pattern. It hurt him, and that was not my aim. But someone who keeps secrets cannot be surprised when those secrets come to light. Meanwhile, I expanded the circle a little more sparingly. I had quiet chats with two of her closer friends. People who had always loved the version of her she presented, but who were kind and fair, asking questions, in a way that sounded like concern. For a mutual friend, not accusation. The idea was not to shame her, but to invite corroboration. The more people who remembered odd nights and missed explanations, the clearer the image became. It's surprising how quickly a social web unravels once one thread is pulled. I also planted small narratives, innocent comments here, a question dropped casually in conversation, a memory recounted that pulled at the seams of her stories. I let others lead the discussion when they were ready. Human beings dislike the feeling of being manipulated without knowing it. Once a whisper of doubt circulates in a friend group, gossip, terrible as it is, becomes a corrective. The thing she had built on applause and attention began losing its audience. Through all this, I kept my face steady. I played the forgiving man when it benefited me. I returned a text here, laughed politely at a joke there, did the little social things that reassured her I was intact. That was part of the plan. Let her believe she'd still got me. Let her believe the story had ended. Her arrogance fed the very mechanism that would reveal her. Confidence that you are untouchable makes you sloppy. I let her be sloppy. There were nights I wanted to break, to send every screenshot to 20 people and watch the fallout like fireworks. But I didn't. There's a perverse dignity in withholding drama. There is also a strategy. The last thing I wanted was to appear vindictive. Vindictiveness muddies the truth. Fact stands cleaner than fury. So I waited. I curated the evidence, kept it neat, and kept my hands steady. The plan took months. There were small victories, friends starting to ask questions, Sammy pulling away, her stories lining up less neatly. There were setbacks, too. She seemed untouchable in moments. People still called her charming, still flattered her in ways that made my chest tighten. But each day her mask shifted a little more, and in those shifts, I found evidence, a misplaced check-in, an accidental tag, that tightened the noose of truth. One night I sat in my car outside the apartment complex where she lived and watched her come and go like a passing comet, spectacular, distant, burning bright, then gone. I felt the old anger flare, but it didn't consume me. I had learned to turn that flame into focus. The plan didn't need any more heat. It needed the steady application of truth in places that mattered, the people who admired her, and the small, public spaces where she curated her life. Truth, presented with calm, corrodes myth. Then the moment came. It didn't arrive with fireworks or a chosen place. It arrived with the hush of a mutual friends gathering, an evening where people were relaxed, drinks in hand, tongues loosened by comfortable company. I had arranged a subtle series of events. People who'd witnessed. Inconsistencies were there, and so was Sammy. There was no grand speech, no theatrical reveal. I watched from the side as one person mentioned an odd coincidence about a trip she'd claimed, another referenced a message that didn't line up, and then someone else mentioned her absence on a night she'd said she was ill. The details aligned like a constellation, suddenly recognizable. People traded looks. Questions formed in the air. The kind of silence that follows the unraveling of a lie settled in the room. She walked in, bright as ever, and for the first time, I watched her not command attention but fail to earn it. Her smile faltered. She scanned the room and saw the slackened faces. That's when the mask truly slipped. I didn't shout. I didn't attack. I didn't need to. The evidence did its work. Friends who had once applauded her began to withdraw their applause. Sammy, who had sat quietly, now looked at her with the raw face of someone who'd been betrayed. She tried to laugh it off, tried flattery, tried to charm the room into forgetting. The charm didn't stick. The social currency she'd relied on ran out. There is a public brutality in being ignored by people whose admiration you counted on. Her world contracted in a way that didn't feel like revenge so much as balance. I had wanted truth, and truth was kinder than spectacle. In that gentleness, she felt the sting. The play was over. After that night, pieces fell away. She lost some friends. Sammy distanced himself. The people she used as currency began to reassess. I felt no exultant glee. I felt something quieter, relief. The suspense, the suspicion, the tightness in my chest, those things loosened. It wasn't that she'd suffered. It was that truth had been restored. And in that restoration, I'd restored myself. I walked away not with vindictiveness, but with a calmness I hadn't known in months. The plan had worked not because it punished her in a showy way, but because it reclaimed the narrative she had stolen. I had turned my brokenness into a project of clarity. I had learned to be precise instead of loud, patient instead of reckless. In doing so, I found my footing again. The broken pieces of me began to build something new, sharper edges. Yes, but also a framework strong enough to hold me steady. Revenge, when it's about justice and not cruelty, can be a teacher. It taught me to set boundaries, to collect facts, and to lean on friends who would not flinch from honesty. It taught me the power of silence and the patience of truth. And in the end, it taught me that the most powerful move isn't always the most dramatic. Sometimes the final move is quiet, clean, and unstoppable. Subscribe to our channel for more videos. Thanks.